In today's video, the study of why my clients can go from looking like this to looking like this. Britney from looking like this to looking like this. And not only are these females able to lose the weight, but they're able to keep it off. I want to talk about how you can see real world results in your fat loss and just what it's going to take to not only lose the weight, but keep it off. Hey guys, what's going on? This is Paul Ravella from ProPhysique.com, and today's video is a pretty serious topic. It's a question I get quite frequently, and for those of you that aren't familiar, I coach competitive bodybuilders, and through that process, I've learned a lot, specifically about women, because I do coach a lot of women in this sport. And so while I get a lot of questions from men on this channel, I thought it was time to address specifically the female population. I've got a couple of things I want to discuss, some studies, some actual real world advice and evidence that I've learned through this process of being a coach and learning about how nutrition works and how women tend to respond to dieting. And I actually got some cool research that was specific to women, but it does come down to a question that I got on my Instagram direct message. So guys, girls, if you have a question, please go to my Instagram direct message, send the questions there. I love to answer them. And the goal for this is to just raise awareness on how we can help people reach their goals. As a company at ProPhysique, you know, these are the things that I train my coaches on, my staff, and we're trying to really make a difference. But the information is free, and I just want to put it out there and provide it for you guys. So here you go. I'm a part of your New Year's challenge. For yo-yo dieters, when trying to cut calories that are already low, it gets unsustainable. How do you go about reverse dieting and not putting all the fat back on? I've tried cutting calories. I did it to lose weight. I got as low as 1,300. Started at 175, got down to 168, but then I wasn't able to keep up with it. And I went back up to 1,700 calories, and now gained it all back and some. I'm having a hard time to lose any. Can you please help with some guidance? I don't want to give up on the challenge. And so thank you so much for this question. For those of you that are in the challenge or considering, joining our next challenge, it's going to be in May. The purpose of this challenge is just this exactly. It's not about just people going in for a set amount of time, 60 days, 90 days, and just losing a bunch of body fat and then coming out the other side worse, right? We've seen the result of that on that TV show, The Biggest Loser. If you're not familiar with that, the show, what happened was they put people through really, really harsh practices for diet, activity levels, and they lost large amounts of weight only to then actually end up heavier. So I want to talk about a couple different cases that I've seen, do dozens or maybe even hundreds of these with my clientele, because as a coach that gets people down to contest weight, competition lean, and pushes people's bodies, men's and women's, to a place where very few people will ever want to go or ever need to go unless you're competing. I've also seen the result of that. It can, there's a pendulum effect. When you push the body hard, it tends to push back. And when it comes to fat loss, it can start to feel like, just like this person said, am I pushing so hard that I'm just stuck? And so I want to talk about a study. We'll put it on the screen here for you to see. This study right here that you see, it's called The Psychological Effects of Weight Loss and Regain. And so what these researchers were studying were, what was the psychological effect of fat loss? And it was done in women, and it was done in obese women. But the interesting thing is that they lost 21 kilos, okay? Which, that's like 40 pounds. That's a lot of body fat. That's a lot of weight. And when they followed up with these women, 6 months later, the average person was up 8 pounds. That's nearly a 50-pound swing, and in some cases probably was. And so you wonder why that is, right? So they had success in losing weight, but they were unsuccessful in keeping it off. And this is really where the problem lies with weight loss. Once you have the weight, are you stuck with it? And I think for myself, no. The answer is no. However, it requires some accountability. So I'm going to highlight a couple of my clients here. The first one here is Stacy Clark. And the reason I want to highlight Stacy is because when she came to us, she was doing our challenge, and she entered our first challenge and made an amazing transformation, and then rebounded a little bit and then entered again. And then she actually hired me as a coach. And so we've gone through this process multiple times. And so I'll put here on the screen for you her starting picture. I think she was around 155 pounds, somewhere in that range, when she entered the first challenge. And this is her picture now, not dieting. In fact, at this point, we're reversing her calories, and she's in the low 120s. So between 30 and 35 pounds of fat loss that has been sustained. This second picture you see here is actually her current body composition without being in a fat loss phase. That's her with her calories very high, cardio very low, maintaining. And so I want to talk about what leads to that success. Now, having a coach, okay, there is a level of kind of, you have to be accountable. My clients have to check in with me. I'm not suggesting that everybody needs a coach to be successful, but you need accountability. And so I'm going to talk to you about some of the ways that this can work for you, because you gave me some calories that you were on, but you didn't really talk about much outside of that. And I think there's two sides to the equation when it comes to fat loss. There's the caloric restriction, because our bodies burn a set amount of calories, right? Our basal metabolic rate, the calories we burn throughout the day. If you eat less, well, you're going to burn roughly the same amount. So if you take in less, there will be a gap created, an energy deficit, and you can lose body fat. However, if you keep your calories restricted for a long time, guess what happens? The body compensates. As you have less body fat, as your body has less calories for a long period of time, things start to happen digestively, hormonally, conservatively. You start to conserve more energy. You don't even realize you're doing it. And when you have less weight, you burn less calories. So your BMR actually goes down when you have low body fat. Obese people usually have fantastic metabolisms, right? So what tends to happen here is that as you're compensating with the calories and your body kind of gets to a place where you're now at your new maintenance, you're not compensating with the other part of the equation, which is the energy out. Creating a method for you to burn calories every single day that does not create more hunger, that actually improves your overall well-being. I've documented many times my success with walking, and my favorite form of cardio for my clients is low intensity, steady state. However, it's not so low intensity that you're just going for a stroll. It's intense enough that you actually get your body temperature up and you break a sweat. The way I visualize this is, body temperature goes up. We're burning fat for fuel. So we're burning at a fast enough rate. We're basically breaking down body fat. What I have found is that when you do cardio that is very high intense, like sprinting, those type of things, it increases hunger. However, low intensity cardio, you can basically do it anytime, anywhere throughout the day, is really what's going to make this lifestyle sustainable for you. When you see someone have success, it's not that they had a quick change. They took a pill, they cut out fat. So what you see is an overall change of your lifestyle. And so we're going to talk about what you could have done in that regard. You had already restricted your calories to a place where you maybe were a little uncomfortable, but had you started to be more active? If not, that would have been the next bet. The other thing that I would have done is had a 1 day per week higher calorie day. If you've got your calories down at 1300, instead of just bringing them back up to 1700, what if just 1 day a week you put your calories at 1700? This is a strategy I use. I call it nonlinear caloric restriction, meaning we bring our calories down, but not all the time. You get this relief without just going back to your previous calories and putting body fat back on. It's just a 24-hour or 1 day period. And then as you lose more body fat, you can even take 2 days per week. You could even take an entire week. I've talked about the research around diet breaks, bringing your calories up to maintenance. This is where coaching comes in, but we're happy to answer questions, especially in the group, around how to manage this. And for me as a coach, it wouldn't feel good to me morally if I was just sending people on fat loss plans, helping them lose fat for a long time. They lose 40 or 50 pounds like the people in the study. And then I follow up with them 6 months later and they actually weigh more than they did when they started their first fat loss plan with me. I would be a failure as a coach. Okay. That would not be coaching. That would be just stealing people's money. Any moron out there can tell you to move more and eat less. But what do you do when moving more and eating less is no longer working? How much more can you move? How much less can you eat? Can you eat more and move less and continue to lose weight? Absolutely. There is a skill set that is involved in this. So I'll talk about another client of mine. This is Britney Schulman. When she first came to me, she had competed previously through poor dieting practices and poor recovery after her competition. She was left with a adapted metabolism, meaning she had been on such low calories for so long that when she gained the weight back, her metabolism still hadn't recovered. So she had left herself with a lot of body fat. And when we started together, it was very difficult to get the needle to move, meaning we had to be very low calorie. Now, this is Britney now in her off season, maintaining this look. Okay. This is not a fat loss phase. So success to me is when you can take a client, get the fat off, bring their calories up, and get them to a maintenance phase where they're able to be really happy with their physique. Now, Britney Schulman also happens to look like this when she competes. Yeah, She's actually going to the Bikini Olympia next year. She won a pro show last year in November. So she's going to the Bikini Olympia. So there is a level of dedication on her part that allows her to stay focused. And it's another thing we talk about when I talk about the success of people that are able to do this long term, is that they're constantly setting the next goal. Okay. If your goal is just to get the weight off, what happens when you get the weight off? If you don't have another goal, you don't have a reason to prep your meals. You don't have a reason to get up and walk. Okay. You have to have a plan. So you have to have a plan to come out of fat loss. And if you wait until the body fat is off, you might struggle. Now, this is where coaching for me really is a skill that I've learned over the last more than a decade now of helping men, women, anybody kind of lose weight, keep it off, depending on their specific goals. And not everybody has to be a competitor, but the thing about competitors is it's very easy for me to get into that mindset because I know what they're thinking. I know, okay, we did this competition. We're going to do another competition next year. We have to be very intentional with bringing our calories up, which brings me to my point about reverse dieting. Now, I did a very popular video, probably close to 10 years ago now, about Jamie Calais, client of mine, who I talked about the success of reverse dieting. What is a reverse diet? A reverse diet is kind of just like what it sounds. You basically start walking calories up. What a lot of people think is when they lose their fat, they think before I started fat loss, I was eating 3,000 calories. I went down to 1,300 calories like you said you were, and I got the weight off. Now that the weight's off, I'll just go back to eating like I was. Well, there's a problem there, okay? It's called adaptive thermogenesis. Our bodies have adapted now to this new reality. You have less body fat. You're probably moving less than you used to do. And if you just go back to eating the same amount of calories you were and get rid of the cardio that you were doing to keep the weight down and lose weight, well, guess what? You're going to start gaining weight. And the psychology behind that is you see the scale up, you go into F it mode and you say, what's the point? However, if we intentionally, instead of going from 1,300 calories to 1,000, if we go from 1,300 calories up to 1,450, and if we go from 90 minutes of cardio a day down to 45, what we start to see is that there is a really nice sweet spot where we can kind of restore some of the digestion, restore some of our non-exercise activity, basically bring our basal metabolic rate up. Some hormones will restore, and we'll get a benefit to that. Whereas even though we're adding calories and reducing cardio, we're not doing it in a manner that is going to allow our bodies to add body fat because we're actually burning more calories throughout the day. Hopefully you guys are doing some resistance training during all of this as well, because adding a little bit of muscle is going to help improve both the shape and functionality of your bodies, but it's also really just going to help you with keeping and owning that lean body mass, which for women, you know, osteoporosis is a very real thing. That bone density, those things and health issues, you know, at a certain age are going to become prevalent. Resistance training, along with being ways to be active every single day, along with being accountable for your diet, it might sound like a pain in the butt, but what's more of a pain in the butt? Being at a body composition or a weight that you hate, or being like Stacy and Britney and getting to a place where you're eating more food than you were when you were 30 pounds heavier, where your hunger signals are gone, where you're focused around your daily activity and your routine to the point where it's not even something you think about. You just go through the motions every day. Just like you would wake up and brush your teeth and have your coffee, it's the same thing. You know, you plan your meals and you go for some walks and maybe you go to the gym a couple days a week. That's really the long-term way for this to happen. Is it easy? No, it's not easy. But if it was easy to take body fat off, people would probably just go through these cycles more often. It's also not easy to live with this. You know, if you think it's hard to get body fat off and keep it off, wait until you've had body fat that is, you know, putting you in an obese spot for a long period of time and you start to deal with the health implications. And now you're either stuck in a bed, or you have to take time off of work, or you can't spend time with your friends and family because you fall ill. Those are going to be much harder. Okay. And so I think from my perspective, you know, the solution, it's not super easy and it's never going to be super sexy, but the word reverse diet implies that we can walk the food up, which we can. And I've seen it happen. It requires accountability. It requires someone be familiar with what nutrition they're taking in. It requires that you know kind of what your calorie ranges are, perhaps even your macro ranges. However, once you get good at that, you don't have to think about it as much. You just continue to eat in a pattern that you're familiar with, but you have to learn what that pattern is. Hopefully this helps answer your question. I will also say, when it comes to losing body fat, when you're stuck in a place like you were where you're at 1,300 calories, Sometimes, and I'll even admit this as a coach, I have to put people in positions where I'm a little uncomfortable with how low their calories are and how high their cardio is. But if your goals outweigh your hunger and your time, and you're willing to go kind of all in on that, you can be more aggressive for short periods of time. Okay. Because once the body fat is off, you can keep it off much easier than you can get it off. Getting those body fat cells to basically just disappear is quite a lot of work. However, keeping it off, if it's this much work to get it off, it's only this much work to keep it off. And it's this much work, basically zero, to keep being the person you are, right? So you can keep putting on body fat, you can keep going through these vicious cycles, or you can do the work once. I've said it with Stacy, I've said it with Britney, I've said it with dozens, perhaps hundreds of clients. You go through the process properly one time, you don't have to deal with it ever again because you've got your body fat down where you want it, you've got your calories up where they should be, and you've got your lifestyle to a place where you understand the checks and balances. Yes, you can go out and have drinks with your friends. Yes, you can go out and have some fun. Yes, you can have dessert, but you also know how to reel it back in. It's not a binary, you're on or you're off. You're always in different phases. You can enjoy your life. You can control the way you want to look. If you want to get leaner, you know how to push. If you want to put on some weight, you know how to do that. And if you want to maintain, you know how to be diligent about it. Hopefully this answers your question. I know I didn't give you a lot of specifics, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the Facebook group that's private for this challenge and jump in there and try to address your question a little more specifically to you. And then for our next challenge, we're definitely going to be doing a lot of education for this. So if you guys are looking for a challenge, we'll probably be doing another one in May or June. Okay. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.